Hi everyone, welcome to Grow Without the Grind, the re-record. We we joked about it on the webinar that haha, we need to make sure we're recording, and then it didn't. So here we are on our Friday re-recording. Thank you so much, Alex, for being here. We're going to cover everything we covered in the live webinar today. And if you have any questions, if you're watching on record, please pop them in the comments below, or you could also DM me or Alex directly on LinkedIn. We love a chat, so we'd love to hear from you. Before we dive in, you might not have met either of us yet. So I'm Bethany Helliwell-Smith. I'm a charity coach, facilitator and speaker. And my focus really is on well-being, making sure that lovely charity professionals like yourselves can look after yourselves while you're doing the amazing work that you do and the vital work that you do. So I do that through, as I say, coaching, focusing on helping people put boundaries in place, look after themselves, and have the confidence to put themselves first, which can be tricky in the charity sector. And I am joined by the lovely Alex today, and I will let her introduce herself.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Alex and I'm the founder of Maybe Later. And we help charities and purpose-led organizations design email programs that make money and teams love to run. And everything that we do is about creating email tools and programs that give teams more confidence and more space and time in their days, whether they're in a fundraising or a marketing role.
Lovely. And me and Alex have worked together previously on my business, Owen Coaching. And yes, she's done wonders for kind of my email journey. So I'm very excited for her to share her expertise today. And I think the reason why we wanted to collaborate on this topic of building supportive relationships that feel good is that I come from a fundraising background. Relationship fundraising can very much appreciate how tough it is, and burnt out myself when I was doing that, hence why I now help people to avoid that and to overcome that. And I think when I've been working with charities, one of the biggest themes that I hear is just how exhausting growth feels right now. It is a tough old sector at the moment, perhaps tougher than we've ever experienced. So I think this is a really difficult time to look after our well-being while we're trying desperately to support the causes that we work with and care so much about. So with Alex's help today, I really hope that we can give you some really proactive actions that you can really take away and implement that are simple, but when we're being consistent with them, they can make a real difference. So let's dive in to what we're going to cover today. So we're going to look at the reality of growth in today's charity sector. We're going to look at why well-being really must come first, not last, as it often comes. We're going to look at the supporter journey without the grind. And then myself and Alex have packaged it all up in a lovely 5-step plan for you so you can grow without the grind. And then in the live session, we had a lovely Q&A, which we won't be able to do with you today, but we've got some questions that we usually get asked. And as we say, if you can pop some comments in the pop some questions in the comments, we'll keep an eye on them and answer them. And our DMs are always open on LinkedIn, so you can find out more there. So I wanted to kick off with a bit of a question today around how you're feeling about growing your charity's audience right now. You could be feeling excited. You could be feeling overwhelmed. Valid. You could be just point blank refusing it or avoiding it. And you might just feel like growth. Oh my goodness, I'm just in survival mode right now. I don't feel like I can grow. All of those things are valid. Feeling excited is a lovely place to be. When we did the poll on the live, it was a real mix actually of overwhelm and excitement, and quite a few people in the chat were saying both as well. So a real mixture of overwhelm and excitement for a lot of you out there. But let's have a look at the reality of what growth looks like in our lovely charity sector at the moment. So across the UK, demand on charity services is rising while income is staying relatively flat. Higher costs are definitely a thing, like for energy, staffing, contracts, which is all making it much, much harder to invest in growth. There are fewer donors as well. So donor numbers are shrinking. In 2024, according to the CAF UK Giving Report, only around half of people gave to charity compared to 58% in 2019. So there has been a real drop off after the pandemic as well of the number of people supporting charities. We've then got staff under strain. I feel like we all went 100 miles an hour during the pandemic, and probably should have slowed down a little bit after that and regrouped into our normal speed, but a lot of people just haven't, and they've continued to have their foot on the accelerator since then, and people are burning out, and it's a real risk to our sector at the moment if we're not able to look after our people. The other thing is the expectations are there. So supporters want timely, personal and relevant communication, particularly via email. And Alex is going to go into all about that today. And then the good news is that trust is remaining steady. So according to the Public Trust in Charities report that gov.uk did in 2025 this year, people are expecting transparency and consistency in how charities communicate. So that's a really interesting thing to think about, is that consistency piece, because I'm going to talk about consistency in terms of boundaries, but there's also a consistency piece in terms of how you can automate your emails and be consistent with how you communicate with your supporters, which will then also help you look after your well-being. It's all linked. So what percentage of people working in the charity sector do we think know somebody that's experiencing burnout? Again, on our live webinar earlier in the week, there was a real mix of responses from 80% to 40% to lots in the middle. And the actual answer to this, according to the think tank report that came out this year, Caring Too Much, is actually 97%. It's a really high number of charity professionals report knowing somebody close to burnout, which just shows really how widespread it is. And I'm sure if you gave it a little think, now you might be able to pinpoint somebody that's struggling, either in your team, your wider organisation, or in your networks. So what can we be looking out for when we're looking at identifying burnout? Somebody that's experiencing overwhelm or burnout might be presenting some of these signs. And the reason I'm sharing these is because I think it really is kind of our... it's really up to us to recognise these in ourselves, but also in our colleagues and our wider networks, and to offer that support when it's needed. So there are really common signs like missing deadlines, withdrawing from meetings or colleagues, frequent absences, or on the other side of that spectrum, working erratic hours. If there's a real change in someone's working behaviour, whether they're getting up super early and starting work and finishing super late, and that's not something that they previously did, or it's just not sustainable, or if they're having lots of sick days and they're working a shorter day and they're not just quite interacting with the team as much as they would normally. That's all real signs that someone might be struggling. It might also present itself in things like low morale, more mistakes. If our heart's not in it and we're really struggling, mistakes can often happen. Difficulty prioritizing. So if somebody's just saying like my to-do list is just getting longer and longer and longer and I just don't know where to start, that could definitely be a sign. And spotting these signs early helps to protect you, your colleagues, and the wider team around you. And if we can all give that support, it's going to see us in a much kinder and more sustainable sector moving forward. At this point, I always like to kind of give an example of when I led a team in an open plan office. I noticed that my intern kind of had her head in her hands and was just looking completely overwhelmed. And because we're in an open plan office, I could go over to her, ask her if she wanted to have a chat. We went into a private office, looked to kind of reallocate some of her priorities, took some responsibility off her, and was able to check in with her on a regular basis. That was pre-pandemic. We don't sit in offices 9 to 5, Monday to Friday anymore, thank goodness. But what that does present is additional challenges when it comes to checking in on people's well-being, right? So if my intern was working remotely from home, put her head in her hands, she's not necessarily going to do that on a Teams call or on Zoom. She's going to probably do that when she's off camera. So I wouldn't have been able to notice that. So really taking in the opportunity really to ask questions, particularly if you're responsible for a team, to check in on people's well-being during one-to-ones is really, really important. One-to-ones can often be about projects and about to-do lists and about prioritization, and that's all great and necessary. But just taking the time once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever you think is most appropriate for your team and the individuals in that team, and just saying, how are you doing? How's your work-life balance? What's challenging for you right now? How can I best support you? Will make the world of difference. And this is why well-being really must come first. So burnout has real costs. It affects energy, creativity, and the ability to connect with our supporters, bringing it back to what we're here to talk about today. The impact goes beyond the individual. Stretched staff can damage trust and organizational reputation. Sustainable growth means showing up consistently over time. So when we build healthy habits like clear boundaries and rest and recovery, we actually create stronger teams and stronger communities, stronger volunteer bases, stronger supporter bases. And that growth that's sustainable protects your energy and your mission and allows everything to continue in a steady, consistent state. So what can you actually do in the short term to really prioritize your well-being and look after yourself while you're building these support relationships? So the first one I always start with my coaching clients is to set realistic boundaries around your availability. That's the work-life balance piece, isn't it? It's, are you available? Are your work emails on your phone? Are you getting emails from your CEO or your chair of trustees at 10 o'clock at night and then trying to struggle to reply to get the answer, because if they've emailed you at that time, then they must need a reply right away, and then you're struggling to sleep because you've not been able to switch off from work. So having boundaries is one of the most effective tools to protecting our energy, protecting our peace. This might look like setting clear time frames for when you'll respond to supporters or internal emails. I know that a lot of people that I work with have implemented an out of office message that's always on, that says I only check my emails in the morning and in the afternoon, and please don't expect an immediate reply. I have something in my email signature that says something to the effect of I work for myself, and at different times of the day and week that might be outside of conventional working times, I do not expect an immediate response. Please reply when it's right for you. So something like that, just to kind of give people the autonomy to get back to you when it's right for them. This might look like being upfront with colleagues about what you can realistically take on during busy campaign periods, or boundaries. They really aren't about shutting people out. They're not about saying no for no's sake. It's about saying not right now, or it's about saying yes. But the impact of me saying yes to this is that that report that you asked for will have to wait until next week, and being really upfront about your prioritization. And that clarity helps you, helps your supporters to all feel more at ease. It might be about building in recovery time into your schedule, especially after campaigns. Growth work often happens in cycles, and Alex is going to talk about this later. So it might be campaign launches, appeals, events, that kind of thing. And these periods of time can be a lot for you and your team. They're a real intense time, particularly we're going into we're now in quarter 4, aren't we, in the run up to Christmas. That's always a really busy time for the charity sector. Christmas campaigns, plans for next year, all that kind of thing. So an example of this is a children's charity I worked with. They had their big winter appeal, and previously they had scheduled planning their spring event straight after. So we're talking, big give, huge that week, that Giving Tuesday, all of that. And then, okay, great, that's done. Now on to spring. And it was just exhausting. So we actually built in a recovery week. And what that looked like was no major meetings were scheduled. People had time to reflect and regroup. And the team came back much more creative, much higher energy for the next project. But also, they were able to properly think about what worked and what didn't from the winter campaign, instead of being like, okay, next. So next year, hopefully we did this last year. So hopefully now, in that children's charity I'm speaking about, are learning from what they did last time, and they're able to kind of put those things into practice and make it easier on them this time, so that that growth doesn't feel as painful. And then the last one I want you to take away today is to focus on quality over quantity in your outreach, because that means that growth will last longer. So it's really easy to feel pressure to keep pushing out more comms, more appeals, more social media posts, more updates. But volume doesn't always equal impact. It can actually be too much sometimes. Fewer, more thoughtful touch points with supporters can often create deeper trust and supporter loyalty. So perhaps ask yourself something like, does this email, does this story, this appeal actually align with what our supporters need and value? And Alex is going to go into so much more detail about this, but I think it's really important to think, can my messaging land in a better way than just flooding people with content? Because it just takes up lots of your time. So to wrap up this section, boundaries, recovery, prioritizing quality over quantity, they're really simple shifts, aren't they? But actually, they can make a huge difference to how you feel at work. And how you feel at work really has an impact on how your supporters experience your organization. And that's something that perhaps we're not very honest about all the time. So having a think about how your well-being also impacts the people that support your organization is important. And it's about creating relationships that feel good for everyone included, for you, your colleagues, your networks, and your supporters and your volunteers. So I'm going to hand over to Alex now, who's going to take you through some really great actionable steps on how to really take this supporter journey forward. Let's just swap over who's sharing, shall we? And then it'll make it super easy, Alex, for you.
Yeah, let's do that. Whilst I do that, one of the things that I'd love to ask you
Yeah.
is like, what tip do you have for, I think a lot of people at the minute are experiencing a lot of signs of burnout because of the news and what's happening in the world. And how do you balance staying up to date with what's happening, especially I think if it's got to do with your role and the cause that you work in. And then also like looking after yourself.
It's so hard, isn't it? The world is so noisy. And I often joke, and it's not really a joke, but I often joke that, our brains are not designed to be able to know what's going on around this massive planet.
Mhm.
We're sort of, uh, if you think about our brain as a muscle, the very basics of it, we're like, oh, we've run out of berries. Let's go forage. Oh, man in the cave community, you've brought home a wild boar. Let's make a fire. Like, we're meant to know about 30 people. So, like, the the understanding of global affairs and wars and picking up, the other day I looked at my phone first thing in the morning and I saw the most horrific video, and it just hurts my soul. And it's so difficult to turn up to work your best, or for me, be the best mother I can be when I've seen such explicit things and I know such awful things are happening in the world. So I have to put boundaries in place, Alex. Long story short, sorry. It's a topic I feel very passionate about. So I have to do things like, when I was growing up, we always watched the 6 o'clock news. That's not something that happens in our household now.
Yeah.
I do not want my 3-year-old to be watching the news on the television. So that does not happen. I keep up to date on the news app and by following interesting, not necessarily mainstream news on social media,
Mhm.
and keep up to date that way, really, because I can then choose when I look at it. And yeah, it's difficult. One tip I did give a client recently actually was to, when you wake up in the morning, make sure that you have a wee and brush your teeth before you pick up your phone.
I love that. I love that. I'm trying really hard to not look at it until, or like look at social or the news or anything until about 10.
Yeah, nice.
And honestly, I think even on days when you can only fit in cleaning your teeth and having a wee, like the difference that it makes to your nervous system. And also to segue into email, one of the things that just made me think of listening to you speak is like what time are we scheduling our emails for? Thinking about where people are on their days and if people are trying to have a bit of space in the morning. Would we want
Yeah,
space in the morning? Don't know.
absolutely. That's so true. Something you said on the webinar, which you might say later again, so sorry, but it was just so good, was thinking about talking to people, talking to supporters on their timeline rather than on the charity's timeline. And that links to time of day as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It might be that sending an email at 9 o'clock works for you because that's when you sit at your desk and you can look at any replies that you might get, or I like to look at the stats, the open
Yeah.
rates, like, oh, what's happening? But you know what? 9 o'clock might actually not be the best time. So play around with that, I would say, and see what the best open rate is at different times of day, different days of the week, and kind of test that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay. So thank you for that, and thank you for answering my question.
You're so welcome.
So in this next section, I'm going to walk you through what goes wrong when our emails are reactive, why empathy mapping helps us understand our supporters better, and the role of automation and personalization in your email program and how it can help you grow without the grind. Uh, if there's one thing that I want you to take away, it's the goal isn't about more emails, and it's about better, more human communication. And whilst you might send more emails over a year, one thing to think about is like it's not more emails to everyone. So if you're a bit like me and you get a bit distracted halfway through something, or whatever it might be, if that's the thing that you take home from this email section, that'll make me super happy. Because I'm so passionate about this. I firmly believe that done right, emails can really nurture relationships consistently, even when you're not at your desk. So the first question is, does your email supporter journey look a bit like this? So when we zoom out, a lot of programs look like this. Someone signs up on your newsletter, they get an automated welcome email because everyone is obviously sending an automated welcome email, please. Then they tip into that sporadic newsletter piece, where, internally you're fielding requests from different teams or departments, or can you just quickly add this in? And that's what makes it feel a bit sporadic. But from a supporter like lens perspective, they're not very consistent. They've got a bit of everything in, and people then, our supporters and our readers go, like, I like this cause, it's important to me, but I don't think their emails are for me. And so they become inactive. That's kind of the one route. And then the other is that despite your sporadic emails, because they really love you, they stay relatively active, and then you tip into appeal season. And all of a sudden, we are putting a huge amount of pressure on our email marketing because we know that, like, social, it's a really crowded landscape. We have a less and less time to get people's attention. And so designing those multiple touch point fundraising campaigns is so important, hence where email comes in. And maybe you are segmenting based on what amount people gave to you, and hopefully that works. And then they make a donation, and you maybe send them a receipt. You might, off the back of that, have some extra stewardship, but a lot of the times you then just tip back into that automated welcome email and then back into kind of the sporadic newsletter section of this. And so in this kind of next bit, I really want to chat about, what do you need to focus on for the rest of this year and for 2026 so that you can grow without the grind, and so that your email marketing program becomes a tool that creates great experiences for your supporters, but also helps you look after you and your team. And the three things that you need to focus on is that you need to improve your newsletter creation flow. Then the second is that there are automations that you need to put in place, and I'm going to chat through the three automations that every charity should use at a minimum. And then the third piece is to look at smarter ways that you can use the data you already have so that you can get a better ROI from your marketing program. So, what goes wrong with newsletters? I hear this all the time. So you're not alone. But somehow, like, newsletters internally turn into absolute beasts because we're trying to say everything, and it ends up being quite bloated. And because we're trying to talk about five different things, it actually ends up feeling quite bland, bland to create, a bit bland to read. And if we go back internally, it can be difficult to get approved because different teams are adding different pieces in, and sometimes they're conflicting priorities and goals. And what often happens is that maybe you email every month. And if we look at average open rates, that means that even engaged people are only hearing from you a handful of times in between appeal season or those peak kind of growth periods that Bethany talked about earlier. And then we wonder why our appeals or our emails to support those growth periods aren't doing as well as we'd like. But then I think what happens is we forget about the external view and the supporter-led view. And our inboxes are so busy these days. If we think about how much the social media landscape has changed over the last 2, 3 years, I think we've really realized as a sector, like, anything can happen, and you really don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. And so we know that we need to nurture a space in a community where we have control, we own that data, and that there's also less like algorithmic things that we need to take into consideration. But what that means is that everyone has started a newsletter. Every business, every organization, there's a real influx. And what that means is that people now more than ever are really expecting personalized email experiences, or at the very least, that the brands and the organizations that they interact with in email know what they've done with them before. So they want acknowledgement if they've, run in a marathon for you or donated to your year-end appeal. And when you talk to them about the next version of that, that you acknowledge that, because otherwise then they really do just start to feel like a number. And ultimately, if those emails feel long and irrelevant, people switch off over time. So, what can we actually do about this, and how can we start to change that newsletter creation flow? And one of the first things is stop calling it a newsletter internally, because I don't know about you, but when I say the word newsletter, like what visually gets like conjured up in your mind? It's got very specific formatting. They're very specific types of things that we can talk about. They have to come from very specific people or voices within an organization. And I really think that it pins us in. And so what we need to do is really ditch those shoulds and know that our emails we can really test and experiment with voices, with formatting. And when we rename those emails internally to something like community building emails or nurture emails, or if you are, I'm going to use an example like a wildlife charity, like Letters from the Wild, like how does that change how you write them, but also how you collect stories from the rest of the organization? And this is where this idea came from, because actually, when I used to work for a small charity in-house, beginning of lockdown, I'd ask every 2 weeks, can you share some stories or things for the newsletter? And those responses were like, we don't have any news, we don't have a new event, we don't have anything big. And so I just really subtly changed the name, and went down the kind of Letters of the Wild route. And the things that people came back with, and the anecdotes and the little stories, or the things that they'd read somewhere else, and it just completely changed that whole approach. So really, I think ditch those shoulds and see how that changes. But then obviously you can think, oh, Alex, that sounds really nice. But we know that like we want our emails to have a strategic purpose. And so the tool that I always use is empathy mapping. And that's, for every email that I write, when I train teams, little briefing doc, scrap of paper on your notebook, ask yourself, like, what do I want a reader to think, know, feel, and do in this email? Because when it starts to get too cluttered, like our brains, linking back to Bethany was saying, like, we're basic beings. We can't overload that decision making, because then we get decision making fatigue and then we don't do anything. So yeah, just a really, really great tool to help you keep your emails strategic, and really supporter led. Now, on to this next bit, automations in email and personalization as well, but they can really feel intimidating. And one of the things I really want you to take away is that you don't need loads of them, and just a few can dramatically improve supporter experience whilst giving you and your team some time back. If anyone watching is on MailChimp, and up until this point, you've maybe been on like their most basic account because you've just been sending one-off emails, as with a lot of other email marketing platforms, if you want to properly use the automation feature, you will need to upgrade your account. And I always bring this up in any talks and training that I do, because it is like 1000% worth it. Take a little moment to think about what, depending on how many contacts you have, let's say like an extra 40 quid a month, but you've got automations and processes set up in the back end that free up hours and hours of time for you and your team. And where else can all that space that's been created, whether you're an organization where it's, use that space to prioritize more rest, or if you're a fundraiser for a small charity and you wear lots of hats, well, where can you, redirect that time to do different types of relationship building? Like, you're always going to see the ROI if you make this investment in automation. That being said, they do take a little bit of brain power, and you can't just set and forget. So they do need reviewing at least once or twice a year, but they help build that trust with supporters and readers so much quicker, because you're sending comms on someone else's timeline and not your own. So it's not about when you remember to do something, it's that email goes out based on when someone signed up what they've done before. And it just already, without getting really technical and fancy with personalization, it helps you create a more personalized experience at scale. Um, I'm also going to just talk about the three automations that I think every charity should invest in, why you need to segment early on, and how you can start to incorporate those different levels of personalization when you want to level up your email marketing program. So, if we go to those three essential automations, the three that I think all organizations have to have, whether you are kind of you deal with individual giving and that's a big part of your fundraising portfolio, or you are a membership organization that has corporates or whatever it might be, really think about why and how to integrate your newsletter welcome journey, a donation thank you that goes beyond the receipt, and a re-engagement automation. So, why do you need these different journeys? Just really briefly, your newsletter welcome journey, when someone has takes that action of going onto your website and fills in their first name and their email address, like that is indicating a peak level of interest with you as an organization and a cause. And so you have their captive attention. And and there's also a stat around something like 76% of people are waiting for and expecting that automated welcome email when they sign up. So it's like, how can you make the most of that? And why does this matter? Yes, obviously you want to kind of help build that affinity with your cause and help them care more about what you do. But on a more technical side, getting people to interact early in emails from you, and by that I mean kind of clicks and replies, is incredibly important for email data health. Because, and again, this could be a whole other kind of separate webinar, um, before emails land in people's inboxes, Gmail, Apple Mail, whatever it might be, those inboxes have a look at how active your email community is as a whole. And the more active it is, the more likely, well, you're going to get through spam filters, but also you're going to get proper inbox placement. Gmail's also brought out some new updates where you're going to be able to sort inboxes based on about how relevant things are. I've written a post on LinkedIn about this if you'd like more information. So it's just going to be more and more important that you captivate that attention and you get people to take those actions early on. But then also, people need to get into the habit of taking actions in your emails. And that welcome journey is a great way to get people to do smaller things so that when it comes to appeal season or asking someone to sign up for an event, they're going to take action in that email from you because they have already. A final note on this one is that in this automation, you can really play. Think about how you can add polls and videos, and just easy ways for people to get to know you better, but also kind of take action and email from you. Then the second one is that donation thank you journey beyond the receipt. And, really simply put, supporters need a timely thank you that isn't just a receipt. And they cannot wait for you to upload your data from, Just Giving or Enthuse, or if you use Stripe integration, whatever it might be. They can't wait for you to upload that data weekly or monthly to then send them a thank you note. And so I often think our biggest blocker with getting this automation running is like technical platform silos. And actually, this is where small to medium charities with simpler systems, so even if you have really basic CRM on email platform, you really have the upper hand here because you can use tools like Zapier that make it so much easier for you to connect platforms so that people are imported into your MailChimp or whatever it might be immediately and they start on that journey. Content wise, if you are sending more frequent community building emails, this donation journey can actually be really light touch. Obviously, you can get as in depth as you want to, but if you are paying attention to those more regular emails, then this journey can really be about zooming out and thinking about milestones. What can you send someone when they've been a supporter for 100 days, 6 months, etc.? And yeah, it's one of my favorite things is when you start thinking about like how do you share the impact based on someone else's timeline and how does that change how they interact with you. And then really quickly for this one as well, thinking about like personalization and segmentation. If you, on your donation form, collect a reason for giving and it's from like a drop-down menu, I think you have to acknowledge that in your comms. And again, there are so many great simple tools that can help you map so that that data gets put into your marketing platform. Because even just one email that's segmented based on why someone gave, for example, I worked with a healthcare charity recently, and there was some of their segments included that a family member was affected by this particular condition, and then another one that they were going through the diagnosis process. Like you can already see how different your copy can be for each of those. And even just one email that acknowledges those different experiences and then branch everyone back into the middle again. Um, I mean, it's what I think we should be aiming for as a standard for supporter care anyway. But you'll see your email ROI over time as well, because those people will just be so much more engaged. And then finally, you've got that re-engagement automation. So what is that? So when people slowly start cooling off, it's an automation that prompts people to basically come back into the fold and take an action. So you use different copywriting techniques to get their attention. And it's just about getting them to open and click emails from you again, because we all get busy, or we all take breaks from our inboxes and things every now and again. And we just want to make sure that we're looking after that churn piece as much as we can. And this again is really important for your email deliverability and your list health. This automation also doesn't have to automatically unsubscribe people if that feels too scary. Um, so as a version one, how can you add in emails and test copy around, do you still care about this cause or do you want to still hear about XYZ and see what those rates are like? Trust or Trust is a really great example of this, by the way. It always sticks in my head. And when you integrate those three things and you branch emails based on the data that you collect and you send, at least 12 community building emails that really encourage actions and replies, you get to create or start to create an email program that number one delivers a much more personalized experience to your supporters. So you'll start to see those ROIs and you can, I think, over time really start to set different targets for the role that email plays in different parts of your fundraising strategy. But number two, a lot of this happens using automations. And so you're not having to hold all of these tiny little touch points with supporters in your mind. And, we're all, we're all in fundraising and on charity marketing because we care about people and we want to build relationships with people in relation to the cause and the organization that we work with. And I think that means that we care more and we hold more. And I really think that we need to use technology and tools to help create kind of more of that balance where we can still kind of meet our goals. And what I love about this map is that you can really start to see how your email goes from like a broadcast newsletter and emails that plug in a bit of appeal season to like a living and breathing ecosystem where you've got those milestones based on someone else's timeline. Your appeal season means that you can send extra emails based on the data that you've collected, whether that's through how people have engaged in those community building emails throughout the year, what information they've given you in sign up forms or polls. And one of the things that I love most about doing this work is like once you start to build email programs like this, you there's so much more kind of like energy and almost joy, I think, in setting up and running these because you can really see the impact of your work, which yeah, I just love so much. I also think if you work for a small organization, even if you wear like lots of hats, if you focus on the three kind of points that I've talked about, it means that you can be more consistent and thoughtful and audience led. Um, and, I really do ultimately believe that once we start to look at email in this way and give it a bit of that front end time and investment that it needs, that you build something that's not only best in class for the sector, but it really helps you kind of grow without the grind too.
Thank you, Alex. That's
No
so
problem.
helpful. I think those three automations, like you say, it's a bit of front end work, but actually long term, that's going to see those small charity CEOs that wear all of those hats spending less time chasing their tails and trying to communicate with people in the best possible way on that Tuesday in November because that's when they need to, because that's when funding's running out. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to share this bit now, Alex, and just talk about kind of bringing it all together. And I think this bit about there being two sides of the same coin is really interesting, isn't it? Because
Mm.
I've definitely worked in charities before where I was a fundraiser looking after a newsletter for the supporters that I was looking after as well, and I would be desperate for other teams to share content. And going back to the open plan office thing, the amount of things I would just overhear while I was walking to the kitchen and be like, hang on a minute, what was that? But actually, sometimes it can be super overwhelming. And I know that both of us have worked in organizations, Alex, where it can feel like you're constantly being asked to shoehorn something else in, and there ends up being kind of 7 call to actions in one email because it all needs to be sent in June. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
let's calm this down and actually be strategic about what each supporter group kind of needs to hear at what given time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like for me, that's where having that email strategy really comes in because it means that instead of just reacting to whatever lands in your inbox, you've got a structure
Yeah.
that sets those boundaries and expectations for colleagues. And also, I think, really creates experiences that are supporter led. And I think it just does loads to reduce the pressure on teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I've put on that slide, it really takes you from broadcasting to connecting. It means that you're not just being reactive or last minute. You're being consistent and you're being thoughtful with your communication. And consistency doesn't just make life easier for you. I'm banging that well-being drum, but it also builds trust with your supporters as well, because they really feel like you're talking to them at their
Yeah,
point in their journey with
yeah,
you as an organization,
yeah,
representing that organization with your
yeah.
comms.
Absolutely. And I think it's like that's where those two parts really come together. And it's like well-being for you and stronger, more meaningful supporter relationships, which has
Yeah.
an effect on you, but also on them.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. And that brings us on to that human connection piece, doesn't it? This is not, when we're thinking about sending that monthly newsletter, it can just feel like, something on our to-do list that we've got to tick off. But let's bring the human back into it and think about, what is it that you want them to feel, do all of that lovely empathy mapping that you were doing. It's not just about ticking off tasks, it's about feeling like your actions actually matter. And that again feeds back to your well-being. If you feel like you're making a difference, if you feel like, well, if not even if you feel like, if you're receiving communication back that's
Yeah,
really, amazing, and you're getting great feedback, that's going to overall have your experience at work feel far better than if
yeah,
you're just like, oh, another one, another one, another one. So when we
yeah,
write these emails as conversations rather than as campaigns, the tone shifts. And I love that you called them like letters from the wild or nurture emails or whatever it might be, because it
mm,
just it stops it being too clinical and too, you know, looking like a newspaper almost. Like we're
Yeah.
not reading newspapers anymore, guys.
And also I think, that authenticity really comes across to our supporters.
Yeah.
And just thinking about like, that question that I asked you earlier about, balance with the news and things. I think sometimes in a way we can almost forget that our supporters and our subscribers are also experiencing the whole broader world that we are. Like, and
Really.
how can we show up more authentically in a way that acknowledges that experience?
Yeah. Pam is not sat round waiting for your email. Sorry.
No. Mm.
Pam's
She
busy.
was though.
Would be nice. Yeah, so we thought, there's so much content in this webinar. How can we actually really summarize this in 3 words? So we came up with this little equation, and I'm not a maths girl at all, but I quite like this. Boundaries plus automation equals resilience. And it could also be sustainability too.
Yeah.
So well-being at work is so often about meaning. It's not just about ticking off those kind of tasks. It's really about how our supporters feel cared for, even when you're offline. And that I just keep going back to that piece around being on their timeline instead of yours. I think that's so important. It's not about when you finally got the energy or the space in your day to download the report from the big give. It's thinking about what's that person expecting when they click donate.
Mm.
And it gives you space also to recover after campaigns without feeling like you're neglecting those relationships. It just makes so much sense, Alex.
Yeah, and I also love, that I feel like sometimes setting boundaries at work can feel really scary, and that email is one of the few tools that I think helps you get into that practice in like a marketing and a supporter comms perspective quite easily, because you're doing something on their timeline, but you can also decide what that journey looks like and set the cadence of it. And ultimately, then, based on the data that you get back from it, feed that into kind of how you control your workload. That feeds into everything that you talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And that's why email strategy and well-being just belong together. They go hand in hand, don't they? And if done well, email is much more than a marketing tool. It can also be a well-being strategy for the teams as well.
Yeah.
And your supporters stay connected, your work feels more sustainable, so your energy is protected as well,
Mm.
and everyone's kind of happy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we would love you to think about one boundary and one automation that you would like to set. And we're recording this at the beginning of October, so we're kind of thinking by the end of 2025. But if you're watching, this is going to be up on YouTube. So if you're watching this in 2026, 2027, set yourself a realistic time frame and think about one boundary and one automation that you'd like to set from everything that we've spoken about today, from something else that you've come up with, whatever it might be. But I think realistically, one boundary, one automation, and that would really change a lot, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we had live Q&A when everyone joined live. As Bethany mentioned, feel free to ask any questions in the comments, and to reach out to us directly on LinkedIn. We love a chat. We love a natter about this
Yeah,
kind of stuff. So
quite
yeah,
clearly.
please do.
And
Um,
then we've really summarized this down into 5 steps as well, haven't we? So the first thing I want you to do is consider your energy first. So that piece around building in a recovery week after a really mega campaign, that's thinking about your energy. You're protecting your capacity before you're adding more to your plate. So those 3 automations that Alex mentioned sound so good, but if you're already at breaking point, what can you take away first before you start doing that? Let's not pop it on top of an already overflowing plate. Let's think about what can actually wait until January. It's a January job.
Yeah.
Let's think about automations and prioritizing that, but actually think about what you need to take off your plate first as well.
Mhm. Then in terms of kind of taking time to know your audience, how can you focus on the right supporters and, quality over quantity? Because just spending a little bit of extra time understanding who's in your space and how they're engaging with you, really makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that kind of brings us on to the third point around, map a supporter journey that really works for you. Think about something that's really simple and sustainable and ultimately is aligned with your mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex covered this so beautifully, but making email your calm growth tool, I think, is just such an interesting way of thinking about it. So you're automating, you're humanizing, you're connecting, you're not just broadcasting. So like turn it on its head in your next marketing or your next fundraising team meeting and just say, like, I watched this webinar, you should watch it too. They spoke about email being a calm growth tool and how that can work in your organization. Like talk it out, start the discussion.
Mm.
And then that last one around choosing your next easy win, just one realistic step forward beats overwhelm every time. So if it is sharing this recording with your team, if it's putting that one boundary in place, if it's setting up that one automation, whatever it is, choose your next easy win and move the pin forward to make things better for you and your supporters. Because it really is those small actions consistently that make such a huge difference. And we just wanted to pop in at the end and kind of let you know how you can work with us both more in the future. So I've got my Do Good, Be Well coaching program, and that's really designed to provide charity professionals with a really comprehensive one-on-one deep dive support that is needed to overcome or prevent burnout whilst making that purposeful work possible again. So if you're feeling stretched thin, you're constantly juggling priorities, or you're feeling close to burnout, if you know that you want to set stronger boundaries, if you want to create healthier working habits, or you feel like you want more control over your time and your energy, and you really want to keep making a real impact in your role, like we said earlier, the world at the moment is feeling like such a noisy place. The responsibility of what's happening in the world can often quite often fall on the shoulders of those working in charities. Compassion fatigue is real. Burnout is real. It's happening. So we really want to be able to have that positive impact without sacrificing your well-being along the way. So that's exactly what this program is designed to do. Across 12 weeks, we work together on practical tools, mindset shifts that really help charity professionals like yourself move from survival mode to a place of clarity and sustainability. So you'll have 6 really structured coaching sessions that are also structured and flexible. So if you come to me and say, I've got an interview next week, we're probably going to focus on that. But actually, there is a framework there. There is modules that we can work through to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Alongside that, we'll also have a personalized action plan as well, and ongoing accountability through kind of email support throughout that 12 weeks. So if this sounds like the kind of support that you need, you can find all the details on my website. You can book a free compatibility call to chat through if this is a good fit for you. We love a chat, as we've said throughout, so a virtual coffee would be delightful. So yeah, let me know if that's something that you would like to explore more.
And basically, how you can work with me is I help you make your email program look a bit more like this and more. And I specialize in really helping teams and organizations move beyond that newsletter treadmill and ultimately that appeal season panic. And how I do that is I support teams with audits, email strategy and content planning, training to really give your team this not only the skills but the confidence to bring email programs like this to life. And then we also do kind of copy and sprint support. So if you want to get those emails and automations live fast, every project scope is unique, but our kind of standard audits, you can sort of see it start at £1,500, and that's for one whole kind of journey and campaign, and bespoke training days with nearly unlimited staff numbers start at 2.5 grand. Very good deal. But yeah, if you want to find out more, feel free to book a disco call with me. Bring your pets, bring a cup of coffee, and we can always have you a natter and find out if it's right for you.
Yeah, you should totally work with Alex. I have. Great. Thank you so much for joining us. This is obviously the replay of the live webinar that we did earlier on this week. So if you're watching this fresh and it's the first time, or you're watching this because you were intrigued to see if it was different from the live, thank you so much for being here. We really hope that you're feeling inspired, and that you're able to go and grow without the grind, looking after yourself along the way. So thank you ever so much. Please do reach out to myself or Alex if you've got any questions or you'd like to learn more about working with either of us. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
everyone.
so much for joining me, Alex, and for giving up some time on your Friday for doing the replay. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks.